Let's look at F. Okay, in F, we've got, again, another set of twins because of the squared. We've got a square root of 6 minus a square root of 2 times its twin, another square root of 6 minus square root of 2, which again means I need to FOIL. We'll start by multiplying out the square root of 6. Well, the square root of 6 times the square root of 6 will give us just 6 because they're identical square roots. Then I can do the square root of 6 times the negative square root of 2. Well, they're both inside a square root, so they'll be together when I multiply them, and will give me, let's see, the negative square root of 12. Continuing right along, I've got a negative square root of 2 times a square root of 6, which again will give me a negative square root of 12. And last thing I've got is a negative square root of 2 times a negative square root of 2, which will give me a positive, just a regular 2, because the 2 square roots will cancel out. Now, just like the last one, I've got to combine my like terms. Well, my like terms to begin with are a 6 and a positive 2, which is just the number positive 8. So 6 added to 2 is just a positive 8. Also, I have a negative square root of 12 and a negative square root of 12, which means I've got 2 of these negative square roots of 12. So I've got 2 of these negative square roots of 12. Now, just like the last one, the 8 and the 2 cannot be subtracted because the 2 is attached to a square root of 12, meaning that the 8 doesn't have a square root of 12. Those are not like terms. However, this one is a tiny bit different because of the 12 here. Unlike the last one, we had a square root of 11. That could not get broken down. On this one, we have a square root of 12. That can get broken down. 12 can be broken down into 4 times 3. What's special about this is we can take the square root of 4 and pull that out as a 2. It will get multiplied by our 2 we already have here. So that will give us a 4 when we multiply those two. But I'm stuck with that 3 inside of the square root because you can't take the square root of 3. Now that 8 that was on the out in front will not change. It's going to stay the same. Again, just like we were talking about a second ago, the 8 and the 4 cannot be subtracted because they are not like terms. It's not just a 4. It's 4 square roots of 3. And the 8 doesn't have a square root of 3 attached to it, so they aren't like terms. You have to leave it as is, as 8 minus 4 square roots of 3. That is your final answer. Let's take a look at G. Same idea. We're still going to be foiling. So we'll start by multiplying out the square root of 6x times the square root of 6x. Well, they're identical square roots, so they'll just drop, leaving us with what's underneath, a 6x. Continue foiling. If you multiply the square root of 6x times the 4, you'll get 4 square roots of 6x. Continuing, we got to multiply out the negative 4 next when we FOIL. When we do that, we'll get a negative 4 square roots of 6x. And the negative 4 times the 4 will get us a negative 16. So notice what happens here, though. I've got positive 4 square roots of 6x and a negative 4 square roots of 6x. Those are just opposites of one another, so they'll cancel out. That means I'm just going to be left with my 6x. And, well, my 16 here was negative and a negative 16. And that's my final answer. Let's take a look at H. Again, we're going to be foiling. First, let's multiply out our square root of x. Well, square root of x times square root of x, if they're identical, they'll just drop off the square roots and leave us with the x. Continuing right along, I have to look at the square root of x times negative 5 square roots of y. Now notice, only the x and y are inside square roots. and the 5 is on the outside, it will stay that way. The negative 5 will stay on the outside, and the x and y will stay on the inside. Just like you see them there. They'll just be together. Let's go with now multiplying out the 5 square roots of y with the square root of x. That'll give us a positive, let's see, a positive 5 square roots of, well, the x and y are again both in the square root, so they'll still be in a square root. Now be careful, here's the hard part, is doing the last two. On the last two we have a, let's see, a positive 5 and a negative 5, which would give us negative 25. Also, let's see what else we have. We have a square root of y times the square root of y. Well, if the square roots are identical like they are, the square roots will just fall off and leave you with the y that's underneath. Now let's see what happens. Notice in the middle when we did our FOILing, we got a negative 5. Let's see, we got a negative 5 square roots of xy here. And we got a positive 5 square roots of xy. They're the same, just one's positive and one's negative. So they'll just cancel out. So what do I have that's still left over after FOILing? We've got the x that we started out with, and we've got the negative 25y that we got at the end of FOILing. That's our final answer.